Good morning, everybody. It is the second day of week 2, and we played Little Wars on Monday. We have a very small class, so it's able to kind of form up sides, play on a single table, scatter out meeples, and find the ways in which we read a game. One of the things that we discovered is so I'm totally hands off in this, except to guide if there's a term that is not immediately obvious. We go to places like the OED, we navigate, and fascinatingly, for a school that literally I teach in the shadow of our big football stadium, backline was one of the things that eluded our students on Monday, because that's the first thing that players do in Little Wars is form their back line. And as I'm going to remind students today, if they had reread through all of the rules prior, instead of going procedurally step 1, step 2, step 3, they probably would have caught that, as well as the win conditions for Little Wars, most of which involve getting to the opposite, the opponent's backline. So we're going to talk about that, right? Like how we have to read and reread, and that some games are intended procedurally and guide and imagine a reader going through these steps one by one as they begin to play, as opposed to reading holistically. But others very much don't. So that's going to be part of today's metacognitive reflection on what we did on Monday. The other part is that they've been asked to read a canonical work of 18th century fiction, which is Tristram Shandy. This is an early edition designed to fit in one's pocket. This is just one volume of Tristram Shandy. This is one of the oldest things in my collection that is not of games, but instead of the playful work of Laurence Sterne. I'm also showing them a 19th century volume 2, because we're only reading a few chapters of volume 2 in this particular class. But you can find a lot of good reading editions of Tristram Shandy, and I'll include, of course, a link to our specific reading in Project Gutenberg. Project Gutenberg, by the way, is not always the most reliable, especially for older texts, because often they're based on the 19th century out of copyright edition. And in the 19th century, a lot of novels, especially things like Tristram Shandy, would get Bowdlerized, censored, made palatable, safe for kids, whatever you want to call it. It's a long history of those kinds of editorial censorships. And that's often what you're going to find in a Project Gutenberg text if you're not very careful. So you really need to know the text you're trying to read to know whether a 19th century edition is going to be useful for you. But hey, I have so many used copies of so many cool editions of Tristram Shandy. This is the one that is the visual editions, which plays a lot with one of the best parts of Tristram Shandy, which is the fact that it used early copyright technologies. In other words, it included things like marbled pages and other kinds of features that had to be done by hand in order to prove that this was official. Print technology is, of course, like other technologies, one that destabilizes the understanding of what a text is and how to trust it and all those sorts of things. And Americans were doing their damn well best to pirate a lot of texts in the 18th century. So things like these images, many 18th centuryists have this tattoo, as well as things like marbled pages and whatnot, end up getting used in this text in all kinds of ways. And this particular visual edition kind of leans into that vibe in all kinds of ways. But it's worth noting that even the earliest editions included these kinds of techniques in order to get the point across. So, for example, the most famous example of a print technology is this. This is the black page of Tristram Shandy, and it's in this edition. It's only one page. It's only one sheet. This is the prior Alas Poor Yorick. It's a morning page, and as Whitney Trettian, the book historian, has talked about, these kinds of morning pages were common way back into book history in all kinds of ways. This is a particularly emphatic version of that one. The other thing, and one of the things that I want to show students in terms of connecting a handbook about play to a playful text that game cites, is the ways in which there's also a blank page in Tristram Shandy. Tristram imagines his uncle, Toby, who we will later hear from H.G. Wells. Uncle Toby, a survivor of PTSD, is recreating the battle in which he was injured near his groin, and the location of the wound, literally, like where he is injured physically on his body and where he is injured physically in the Siege of Namur, become this, like, who's on first style joke, as he is kind of having this will they won't they kind of courtship with a woman named Widow Wadman. And when Tristram describes the Widow Wadman, he gives the reader a blank page and says, paint her to your own mind. And so this is one of several things that the Sterne Trust, which is the home of Shandy Hall and a bunch of Sterniana, and that you can buy. If you're teaching this stuff or just a nerd like me, you can go to Shandy Hall's website, to the Laurence Sterne Trust, and many of these art objects are still available. Another one that's really great is Tom Gauld's Endless Journey, which is a Maiorama. In other words, I'm also going to show these to students today, is there's all of these different scenes, and the Maiorama can be rearranged however you want to start to tell a kind of visual story. It can form, according to the back description, the 12 picture cards can be arranged to form 479,1600 different landscapes. So we're going to have fun with that today. Because Sterne's novel is a playful work that has in turn inspired a lot of play. So Paint Her to Her Own Mind was a 2018 project that invited artists to indeed fill in the blank page, and some did so with text, some did so with these kinds of haunting images, some did so with additional black pages, and we get, I think this is pretty Tom Gauld again, and I often and this one is particularly lovely. But so we would get all of these different visions of meditations on beauty, meditations on love, meditations on the depicting of women, which I think is an interesting counterpoint to the way that Little Wars imagines the interventions or the participation of women in the games that Wells is trying to play. Very famously, Little Wars is explicitly designated on the title page as for boys and men and a few intelligent girls. And so we're going to talk about that today, because it is almost inevitably something that students bring up as something that's quite striking to them. The ways in which the game is imagining a particular kind of audience includes the embodied reality and what people are wearing who are interacting in the space. So that's what we're doing today, and then we'll be transitioning over into the Brontes next week. It's another short week next week because of Martin Luther King holiday, so we don't have class on Monday. We only have class on Wednesday. A roller coaster of challenges. Students do have Spine to be playing, so we're going to be talking about that logistics today too. So Hope you're all well. This is a weird time in so many different ways, but I think what I love about these particular texts, in all their imperfections, in all their strange experimentation, in all the very different ways they imagine the world, what I love most about Tristram Shandy, in particular, our focus text for today, is the deep compassion for humanity. Sterne was an abolitionist and a clergyman, and imperfect in all kinds of interesting and sometimes salacious ways. But I carry with me, for all of my life, an image that I'm going to draw my students' attention to today in the ways that Sterne has Tristram Shandy as narrator describe his Uncle Toby. And he tells this story, you know, he's told about how his Uncle Toby is a military man, he was injured in battle. And then he talks about how his Uncle Toby would not hurt a fly, literally, that he has seen him lift the sash of a windowsill to let a fly out into the world, saying, "Surely there is room enough in the world for both me and thee." And that's always a beautiful image to have with us, and I think one now more than ever. Take care.